I hope the title of this video is enough to entice you to take a look at it. I did a video in 2013 regarding the Lyman 223 case headspace gauge. And I think it's a pretty good video, but I recently had a comment on that video, and I reviewed it again, and then I reviewed a whole bunch of videos that are on YouTube, and I couldn't believe how much lack of knowledge was being portrayed about these rifle headspace gauges and what they actually do. So I'm going to go over what they do and what they don't do, and excuse the video. I'm not a professional photographer, and I'm using a junky old iPhone. But this is a 223 Remington Lyman headspace gauge, and it only measures two things. It measures headspace and length of the brass. It does not mention that it will do anything else. So I'm going to take a Fiocchi 223 Remington, which is a pretty nice bullet, pretty nice cartridge. I'm going to put it in. I'm going to hold it up vertically, and hopefully you can see the top in focus, and you can see that the head of the case does not stick up above the top line here, and it's kind of centered in between. And you can see on the bottom that the cartridge, the bullet itself is actually through the bottom. Now, what everybody does, and they do this incorrectly, is they put their finger on top of the primer and they flip the gauge over, and then they look at the brass coming through, which is hard to see on this video because it's not focusing good. And they say, oh, that brass is too long, it needs to be trimmed. Well, that's not how you measure it. The way you measure it is you lay it down on a flat surface, and then you look to see if the brass is between the upper and the lower limits, and then you know that the brass is correctly lengthened. You don't do it by holding it up in the air and pushing on the primer with your finger, which is what everybody seems to do in these dumb videos. Now, the other real question is this ammo safe to shoot? Can I tell from this gauge that it's safe to shoot? The answer is no, I can't tell. This is not an ammo checker. What this is measuring is headspace and total length. You need an ammo checker to see if this ammo is going to be really safe to shoot. And Lyman makes those. They make them for rifle calibers where I think you can put 5 or 6 different calibers in, and you can measure your ammo zip, 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 zip. That is not the same as what this does. Now let's explain what this does. Here is a resized brass. Primer has been knocked out, and this has been resized already. Now what this gauge measures is it measures the datum line, which is the line from the top of the shoulder to the bottom, right down here. And that length is what it measures. So when you resize your brass with a full length resizer, you are actually moving this datum line down lower or not as much. After you fire it, it may need to be moved down lower. Now let's put it in the gauge and see what it looks like. You hold it up in the air to measure headspace. And holding it up in the air, you can see that, I hope you can see, that the top of the cartridge brass is below this ledge, but not below the lower edge. And I think there's like 5 thousandths difference between those two. Now, let's say that you put it in and your brass doesn't go down all the way. What does that mean? That means that you need to screw your full-length resizer die down lower so that it goes down, it shifts the position of the datum line to a lower position, and your resizer moves that datum line. This one is okay, so we don't have to do it. But if it had been sticking up, you need to screw it in. Now let's say that you're holding it up and that brass is actually lower than the bottom edge of the gauge. If that happens, that means that your die is screwed down too much and you need to back it off. Maybe 1/8 of a turn or 1/4 of a turn. You don't want your die to be set incorrectly, and that's what the purpose of this gauge is to set your dies. Now, if the brass is sticking up too high, your AR is not going to go into battery and may actually ignite the loaded cartridge where it's not fully supported by the barrel. In that case, you're going to possibly have a kaboom and blow your whole rifle up. You don't want it too low either, because if it's too low, your primer may not be hit by the firing pin. What you want is just between the lower and the upper edges when it's held up in the air, not when it's down on the table. Then you hold it and flip it over and you look at your case length. Now here's where you look at your brass length, and the brass length should be between the upper edge and the lower edge. Then you know that your case is properly lengthened. Again, this does not tell you that your diameter is good. But to be honest, I have never had a case that fit through one of these where it didn't also properly fire on a gun. But a lot of people on the web and on YouTube are telling you that this is an ammo checker. It's not an ammo checker. The purpose is to find out what the proper headspace is for your cartridge. Now remember, when you set your dies up or down, what you're doing is you're moving this datum line right here up and down. You're making it either lower or you're making it higher. And that's what the gauge tells you. It doesn't tell you anything more than that. Lyman makes a nice ammo checker, and if you want to have that for out in the field to check your loaded ammo. But this is for setting your dies and making sure that you have your dies screwed down properly to get the correct headspace. Now, that's different than this Lyman case checker die for 9mm. They look the same, but actually they're different. Don't forget the 9mm is a straight walled case. There's no datum line per se as there is in a 223. Now if I put this also Fiyoshi, if I put this in, I should see the same thing. I should see that the top of the brass is between the edges, no higher, no lower. Obviously the primer needs to be fairly flat too. You don't want your primer up higher. And I should also note that when I turn it over, you can see case overall length, it is not exceeded. So if I put this down on a solid surface just the way it is, that brass should not lift up showing that I have not exceeded case overall length. If I have exceeded case overall length, the bullet itself will actually be out on the bottom. So this particular gauge gives me a go, no go ammo checker. Make sure that the brass is good and that the case overall length does not exceed SAMI specifications. This headspace gauge does not do that. And remember now, the headspace gauge does not accurately tell you the diameter, only length and datum line. Datum line from here to here, and total cartridge length. Now, you can use the calibers to get total cartridge length, but I don't know how you're going to measure datum line and get the correct headspace without one of these gauges. So, should you have one? I personally think you should. Having an ammo checker as well, that's nice. Just pop it in and it'll give you a go, no go as to whether your ammo is good or not. And for pistol, these gauges really are just ammo checkers. Everything on this is meeting SAMI spec, so that I know after I load this, I'm meeting SAMI spec and I'm good to go. Now, I'm going to be honest. I don't load rifle. I hate loading rifle. There's too much case prep. It's a pain in the neck. And ammunition is cheap right now, so who needs to load it? But I have the equipment. I have the dies. I know how to do it. I have the primers and the powder and the bullets and all that stuff. If I needed to do it, I'd do it. I save my brass, but I'm not going to be trimming brass and spending that much time for a cartridge that I can buy for 30 cents or even less online. I do like to load pistol, and I think pistol is worth loading, but rifle is just too labor intensive for me. You don't save any money as far as I'm concerned. So I hope this helps explain what I think are some of the gross errors that I see on the web. And the most common one that I see is people loading, they turn it over, they hold the cartridge with their finger and they say, oh, look at that brass, it's sticking up too much, it needs trimming. No, you don't measure it that way. You put it on a flat surface and you measure by looking at it now, and it should be exactly between the upper level and the lower level to be good. So when you see people giving you advice on how to do this and they're pushing up like that and saying, oh, look at that, this high, I got to trim that brass, that's bull. That's bull. And if you take your calibers and measure the size of this, it should come out to, I believe it's 1.670, which is the exact length of what cartridge case max is for SAMI. But again, these are cut a little wider than case checker would be, so it is not a case checker as far as making sure that your finished cartridge is the proper diameter. But look, if you're loading it with 223 dies and you're doing a full length resizing, you should be proper SAMI specs. The only thing that your die does is changes where the datum line is on the neck, and you can lower it and raise it, but you're resizing to supposedly SAMI specs. So when people say that when they have a loaded round and they put it in one of these checkers and it fits perfectly like this one does, it goes bang and it's perfect. Well, yeah, it is perfect because it has been full length resized exactly the way it should be. I hope this video helps, and I hope the people who are posting the information wrong take a look at it.